Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros and LEAP, helping students to succeed in all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school throughout Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with tests, school, and life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 60 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to explore today is intentionality on the road to college. But first, let's meet our special guest, Ann Cadwallader.
Ann Cadwallader, founder of My University Coach, has worked in education for 35 years and has guided students through the college admissions process as an independent educational consultant for nearly 2 decades. She holds a BS from Stanford University and an MBA from the University of Minnesota, and in 2020 earned the Certified Education Planner designation, an achievement that reflects her deep expertise in college advising. She has personally visited 193 college campuses across the country, giving her firsthand insight into a wide range of schools and student experiences. Known for her calm, strategic approach, she is dedicated to reducing stress for both students and parents and helping families make smart, intentional choices so students can tell their story with confidence and clarity. Welcome.
Thank you, Amy. It's fun to be here.
And it is fun to have you here. Well, actually, we'll see how fun it is.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, knowing you as I do. Before we get into a really interesting topic, intentionality on the road to college, we'd like to hear a bit about your background as a college counselor.
Absolutely. Really, I've spent my entire career with high school kids and involved in the admissions process. So after I graduated from Stanford, I started with test prep, which you two are very familiar with. And I taught the SAT, LSAT, GRE, and GMAT.
Good times.
The whole suite of them, actually. That's the whole menu.
Yes, exactly. And got a little burnt out on test prep, so went on to become a math teacher, and then backed away from teaching when I had my own kids, but kept doing the tutoring on the side. And over time, these kids would come to me and they were asking great questions like, what do these scores mean? And am I going to get into the college of my dreams with this score? And who do you think should write my letters of recommendation? And I loved their questions and I wanted to give them real answers to them. So in 2006, I went back to grad school, got my MBA, wrote a business plan, and started My University Coach.
I love it. So you went to business school with the intention of starting this
did,
specific
as a
business.
matter of
I love
fact.
that. I love that.
Yes, I did.
And it is funny in test prep how much we can get drawn into those conversations about college admissions, right? It's part of like the process, but at the same time, some of us know more and some of us know less. So you got to figure out what your lane is, right? When you're working with those kids.
Exactly. And so I wanted a more educated lane. Yes.
Yeah, and you picked it. And, it's so funny because we talk all the time about choosing the way in which you want to support students on their road to college. Because to me, the idea of visiting 193 college campuses, as impressive as it is, it doesn't sound like that much fun. I'd rather take
Mike does not
literally
like
193 SATs and ACTs.
No.
than visit
Wow.
100. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like the thing that we are excited to do that we also know will allow us to bring the most value to the student process.
Right.
So
Yeah,
like you had a vision, like I want to help with these are the problems I want to solve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your point of what sounds fun versus visiting colleges versus taking 193 tests, that's exactly what intention is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Do what actually means something to you instead of what you think means something to somebody else.
That's a beautiful segue, Ann. Let's take that a step further because we're talking about intentionality as far as career choices go or pivoting from one way to work with people to a different way. What does intentionality mean for college-bound high schoolers? And at what point do their actions need to align with their intentions?
That's a great question, Mike. So I've worked with a lot of students across the academic spectrum. So high achievers to what I'll call late bloomers. And I've seen how powerful it is when a student changes their mindset from saying, I need to check all the right boxes, to actually making choices that reflect who they are.
Mm.
And there's a moment, and sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's huge, when a student shifts from asking, what do colleges want, to saying, I know what I care about and I am ready to own it. And that shift from compliance to confidence is really where the real growth happens. And this growth, in my mind, changes everything, not just in college admissions, but really in how they move through the world.
We often talk about authenticity in the college admissions process. And I'm just curious, do you see intentionality as being that authenticity, or is this
Like a
something
reflection of
right,
authenticity?
right.
I think intentionality is exactly that authenticity because it's being deliberate and thoughtful with your decisions in a way that says, I'm willing to show exactly what I care about with my decisions, from my courses to my extracurriculars to whatever story I tell. I want you to really know who I am, and I'm willing to reflect that in everything that I do. Now, the caveat to this a little bit is these are younger kids, right? I'm not saying they have to have their life figured out at age 15. They don't. But I do think even at age 15, they can start making decisions that reflect some level of curiosity or purpose or direction. And they don't need everything that they do to be connected, but it shouldn't just be haphazard.
And so there's a bunch of different areas, right, where they can start to demonstrate this intentionality. So let's talk about course selection, right? Which is the first probably way you start high school is you pick the classes you're going to take as a
Or
freshman.
even before high school, right? Like the students that
Right.
want to, if they have a STEM future, they need to accelerate early to get into those calculus classes that selective STEM programs require.
You read my mind, Mike. That's exactly what I was going to say. So I think one of the most overlooked pieces for kids is their transcript because they just look at that number and they go, here's my GPA. What can I do with this? And they forget the story that is told behind that GPA based on the choices they have made with their classes. So, yes, eighth grade, ninth grade, they have very limited flexibility, but that math track is a big one. And they need to know, even at that young age, that if they have calculus on their transcript as a senior, they are signaling an interest in STEM. And if they don't have it, they are signaling an interest away from STEM. So it's not that it's a deal breaker not to have it, but it is a deal breaker for a kid to get to senior year and go, what do you mean I can't apply as an engineer right now because I just took pre-calc as a senior?
Well, it's kind of funny because I have conversations with admissions people at Case Western Reserve, which is a local but selective
Mm-hmm.
university. And we have this conversation because we talk about when a student submits their transcript, because you don't have to pick major to be accepted to Case. And so
Right.
they have to try to suss out if you are going to be that engineer. Are you going to be a nursing student? Are you going to be a humanities kid? And by the time most of the students are actually contemplating the schools they're going to apply to, they've laid that out, right? Because it's pretty clear when you look at the transcript if they're a STEM kid, if they're a humanities kid. So it is interesting that kids don't realize, like, if you didn't pick the right math and science courses, you aren't going to reflect, it's not going to reflect who you really are on that transcript.
Right. It'd be really strange for a kid with AP Bio, AP Chem, and Anatomy and Physiology to say, super excited about journalism.
Exactly,
We'd all be
right?
saying, what happened to AP Lang and AP Lit?
Right,
Right.
right.
So I don't think that a kid should look at high school and go, I'm just going to take every advanced class that's ever offered because that's what colleges are looking for. They are looking for rigor, but they're looking for rigor that makes sense. And it's that making sense and that intentionality with their decision makings that shows maturity. And that's what colleges notice.
This all makes perfect sense to me. And I'm going to ask a question that is directed at some of the parents who are listening, because we're talking about rigor. And there are many well-meaning parents that want to ease the pressure on their teens. They want to relieve their burden, and they pull them out of honors, accelerated IB, AP classes. They're like, I think that it would just be better to get a higher GPA than to work this hard. But that might send the wrong signal when those students then choose to apply to selective programs. Is that your experience?
It totally is. And what I try to tell kids is there something you think you love? Why don't you try honors as a sophomore just in that one academic area and let's see how it goes? And then if you continue to love it, then let's expand in junior year and then you can fully blossom as a senior and again be showing growth, be showing maturity, be showing intentionality. And if you take AP Lang as a sophomore and you hate it, and then you want to switch to the sciences, that's equally okay. Say, look, I tried this, and maybe now I don't want to be a writer. Maybe now I really want to go to PA school because I took this AP bio class, and that's where I loved. And then I got a job volunteering at the hospital because I wanted to learn more. Again, it comes back to authenticity along with that intentionality.
Yeah, I see this with the foreign languages because we know colleges really want you to take as much foreign language as possible. So you have those kids who are trying to get into the AP level. But at the same time, you could be in a situation where making a choice between taking 4 years of a language versus switching and only doing three, but then doing another class that is rigorous, but that speaks to that intentionality. Like it's, yeah, I love this idea of being really deliberate about the choices that you make, because again, it's telling the schools a story about yourself.
Yeah, I had a kid a few years ago who had dyslexia. So language really wasn't an option for him. And in Minnesota, you don't have to take any years of language to graduate from high school. So starting his freshman year, every year through high school, he either took two math classes or he took two science classes. He applied to all colleges that said very clearly, we require 2 years of language. And he very simply, in a few sentences, said, I have dyslexia and I can't take a language. So here's what I did to challenge myself in other ways because this is what I love. I'm going to go into medicine. And guess what? Every single college accepted him.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And that really does speak to an applicant who is in touch with himself and his interests and has a long-term plan, which I think is like inherent in the idea of intentionality. It's what do you intend?
Right. Exactly.
I also like there, though, how you're talking about that student was able to articulate that to be very clear that that was not a random choice, right? So it's also viewing at the end of the line, if there's a place at which you can kind of explain, the choices that you made, the why, that really does.
That student might have had a little help in
Yes,
crafting
well,
that
I'm
statement,
sure
right?
he did. But that's
Mhm.
right. But that's why you work with an independent education consultant.
That's right.
It is kind of interesting. I think when we talk about intentionally making decisions, then there's the whole area of extracurriculars. Now, then some would argue, like, what matters when you're thinking about which clubs or activities to participate in high school? What do you think really matters on the path of intentionality there?
So I think it's a couple things. In general, sort of broad advice to kids that I give them is in ninth and 10th grade, explore. And in 11th and 12th grade, focus. And if you can, get some leadership experience. But what does that really mean? So let's take an example of a kid who we've all worked with before, James. James is a good kid. He's got solid grades. He's worked with you guys. He's gotten his test scores up a little bit, right? And he's got soccer and he's got yearbook and he's got babysitting and he's got Model UN on his resume. And his parents are like, he's doing great. He can go wherever he wants. But when you look a little closer and you realize he hasn't done any one of those things for 4 years, None of them really mean anything to him. He's literally just looking around and picking things completely at random, and he just doesn't have a story to tell. It's not that he's lazy, he's not. And it's not that he's unfocused. He just made his decisions based on other people's opinions instead of making his decisions on what really mattered to him, right? So at the end of the day, it became so difficult for him to tell a compelling story, not because he didn't have one, but because he hadn't built one,
because
right?
he hadn't lived one, because he
He hadn't,
didn't pursue with the
yes,
time, right? Like how you spend your time describes who you are. And if you spend your time flitting from thing to thing without a connected thread, you seem, I mean, you said he's not unfocused, but you seem unfocused, or you seem like there's lots of things that you want to do, but nothing that you might really love, or you fall prey to the myth of the well-rounded student.
right. And my thought is it's not about being well rounded, it's about being well intended.
Hmm.
I think they
Yes,
call is that called like the angular approach, or there's
Angular.
something a new like where it's honed, like this is the sharp, like the sharp
it's
tool of like
pointy.
pointy,
Hmm.
Pointy,
right? It's
but
got to
well
be
intended shows a
right.
little more like
Right. And well intended gives kids a chance to make mistakes along the way and to change their mind. I started high school really believing I wanted to be a lawyer, and I'm finishing high school completely convinced that I want to be a special ed teacher. That's okay. It's a great story. And what you have done through those years that reflects that growth, that's then what really matters.
And it's probably worth mentioning if people didn't know that on the Common App, right? Don't they have to list like how many hours is it per week that
It's
they've
hours per week and weeks per year.
right? Which all of a sudden, when you start to fill that out, it's like, whoa, how many did I really do those many out? Like, but it's important to understand, like for parents, even that your student's going to have to provide like an actual kind of like quantitative sort of
Right.
list of that.
Exactly. And when they volunteer at Vacation Bible School once freshman year, and it was a 3 hour commitment for 1 week, I'm like, that's really not showing a lot of depth to that decision.
100%. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's interesting too. When we talk about, so service, years ago, probably for us back in the day, service would have been something a little bit more, I don't know, could have demonstrated something. I know at a lot of schools, it like for National Honor Society, there might be requirements for service. So I'm wondering, how do choices about volunteering or even choices about where you work, what does kind of that, add to this whole equation?
Well, that's a great question. And I get it all the time. The volunteering and the jobs definitely go hand in hand. And what I often hear is, do I have to volunteer? Is it going to look bad if I don't? And that's a question that's really driven by anxiety instead of being driven by curiosity, right? I don't want kids to ask me, what's the minimum I have to do to put this on my application? I want them to ask me questions like, I think I want to be a veterinarian. What are some things that I can do, volunteering or paid, to expose me to this so that I have a better idea of, is this something I want to pursue? Right. So when parents or kids come to me and say, do I have to volunteer? I say, no, you don't have to do anything. Volunteering can be a very meaningful way to engage with the community, as we know, with the caveat of it should be something you actually care about doing and not just trying to check a box. Because what colleges are paying attention to is how students spend their time, yes, but also why they are spending their time in that. And if it's just obligation, it's not going to carry very much weight. Now, do
when
you
it
want me
comes
to
to
go
the
on about
work.
jobs?
Yeah, I do. I definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So jobs are a little bit different because they can signal something else. Some kids don't have a choice. They have to work. They're not choosing between volunteering and working.
That's
And
what
I'm
I was
not
going to
Right.
ask, that if it's like it's they're not doing it because they want to, they're doing it because their family needs them to.
right. And that's a very different do I have to work? That's a parenting question, not a college coach questioning. So if we put those kids into the category of bravo to you for standing up and helping with your family, that's great. But if we're looking at the other kids who really do have a choice between volunteering and working, one of the things about work is that you can get fired from your job. And very rarely do you get fired from volunteering. So if I see a kid who's had the same job for 3 straight summers, I think, wow, that kid shows up on time. That kid knows how to wear a uniform. That kid is courteous to both customers and to their managers. That kid has some time management skills because that's what 3 years at the same job will signal. And that to me, again, is deliberate and mature and a great thing to signal.
And even some jobs, like I think of in my area, like we've got some great ice cream shops and like the kids who go and scoop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's often those ice cream shops are practically run by teenagers, but at the same time, they have leadership positions. Like I know my daughter in high school was like the team leader. She had the keys to like open and close the store, which I think is
Yes,
something you take for granted, like about, oh, wow, this kid was trusted, enough to be able to do that. So there can be opportunities in work where that really can demonstrate like that leadership.
absolutely. And we have the same thing here. The kids who are the scooping the ice cream, but they have the keys, like it's a big deal. And then they're managing that till at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
This all makes a lot of sense, Ann, and I think that we hit kind of the most formative aspects of a student's high school career and how students should be deliberate. They should have a vision in mind, even if that vision is exploring things that they think they like to see if they want to continue with them. Are there any other aspects of the choices that college-bound teens make that we should be discussing?
Well, I could talk about this for hours. I realize that we are a little bit limited on our time, but clearly I'm a bit passionate about all of this. I think the big thing for me to help kids and parents navigate high school is that colleges are not looking for perfection, but they are looking for a sense of ownership from the kids, right? And they are not hoping to find a made up narrative in that application, but they are looking for authenticity and deliberate intentionality. I think that the kids who thrive in this process are the ones who stop asking, what do colleges want to see from me? And start asking, what is the right next step for me? And when students make choices that reflect curiosity and maturity and purpose, that's what stands out. And for me, as a parent and a coach, I think this leads to better outcomes, not just in admissions, but in these kids' lives.
Do you think that uh, college admissions staff can tell when someone is shaping a student's direction versus when a student is making choices him or herself?
I think it's hard to. I think if the kids, I think all kids are guided in their decisions in some way. And if they are guided by somebody who's asked them a lot of questions and said, okay, why don't you think about trying this? And here are 5 options, pick one of them to try, then that kid takes ownership for that decision. But I do think they have to be taught how to take that ownership. So, yes, there's been some guidance along the way. The guidance has the goal, or in this case, the intention of teaching those kids how to own it.
Makes perfect sense. And like you, we could talk about this topic for hours. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be here.
If listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
That'd be my email. So, Ann at myuniversitycoach.com.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
Did you enjoy this episode as much as we did? Find expanded links and more for this and all of our episodes at our show page at testsandtherest.com. While you're there, be sure to explore everything the larger TestBright site has to offer, including real, expert, unbiased answers to the toughest admissions testing questions. Of course, we'd love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to Test and the Rest on your favorite podcast platform. If there's a topic or guest you'd like us to feature, just let us know and spread the word.